really can't stress enough as far as compact practice goes. If you're in some state of agita, that is almost per definition unnecessary suffering or dukkha. It's just dumb. And many people would admit it, but a lot of people are still stuck in the rationalization phase. They're looking for reasons, and then they can find reasons, and then those reasons seem to be enough for the rational mind. That's another layer of complexity, but the good thing is just to keep simplifying things. Looking for things to be aggravated about is not skillful, okay? That is the first principle. So if you've been doing that, if you've been trained to do that, if your social circle or family is prone to do that, they're all wrong. They have been wrong. It's a bad habit. That's it. Anybody can have it, any culture, any family, anyone at any time can pick it up. It's normal, it's common, it's vulgar, it's undesirable. It's, in a way, it's defective. We were not put here on this wonderful, marvelous, fortunate plane of existence to be aggravated by something. Now, it happens, no doubt, but catch yourself and limit it. See, suffering, I didn't say suffering per se. I said unnecessary suffering. And when you're looking towards aggravating things, especially when it's just in your mind's eye, i.e. memories, i.e. changing forms and conditions, things around you, sounds around you, memories of past conversations, worries about future conversations, worries about future situations. You're using your imaginative or imaginary powers to create suffering for yourself. Mental powers, spiritual powers. That's the whole point. So, awareness is step one. What's happening inside? What are you thinking about? Why are you thinking about that or this? Why are you thinking at all? Why aren't you in the eternal here and now? What is here and now? Anything aggravating? Well, don't look at that. Let that go. Oh, then something else comes up. Let that go too. And again, that's the process. And there have been people, they have just been days and weeks, and in fact, years doing that. And they still can't get rid of it all. In fact, the Buddha went into past lives, 1 million past lives. That's how far he went. That's another great thing I like about the practice is we don't have an understanding about these things. Like, why is this person called neurotic? See, I don't like to use those labels, but neurotic is helpful because it comes from a bygone age where people were trying to get or come to grips with these things, and so they came up with a label. Why is this person bothered by, for example, past events where other people have moved on with their lives? Healthy people, not neurotic people. Why is there this person and then that person, and they try to figure it out? Well, that's how you do it. But it takes right effort. It takes conscious right effort. Conscious right effort because you have to be aware of what you're thinking about, how you're thinking. And then you have to make course corrections, micro course corrections. That's the way I like to think of it. You lose nothing when you drop something aggravating except unnecessary aggravation. Here's another foundational point. We will all die. If you're a human being, you're listening to this, you understand language, you will die. Now, a lot of people that throws them into neurosis because then they start worrying about that. No, what it should do is liberate you. That thought is liberating. Here's the other crazy fact. You don't know when. Everything's fine. You think you could drop dead in 2 minutes. You listening to this, you stubborn, know-it-all kind of person that plays the odds, this could be the last thing you hear. You don't know. You think you know. You don't know. I would say 99% of people who die don't know. Now, look at it from the positive side. That's great because you don't have to think about it all the time, but you can consciously bring it to awareness in order to free yourself from anything that's bothering you, because you could be dead in 2 minutes. So is it really worth it? Do you want to spend your last few breaths on this planet busted up about something, aggravated about something, suffering unnecessarily on a spiritual, mental level? Or do you want to not do that? I think not doing that sounds a lot better. Now imagine you'll be alive not only in the next 2 minutes, but maybe you'll live 20 years with that attitude, or 40, or 60, or 80, or 100 years like that. Doesn't that sound like a better way to live? Well, here's the other very good news. It's attainable. It's possible. But it does require right effort and right view on your part. And those things are your responsibility, 100%. You got in a car accident this morning? That's what this universe has given to you in the form of adversity. Nobody on this planet gets through this life without adversity, some form of adversity. Look at little kids when they're born. They have absolutely nothing. They're fighting for their lives. If they don't get food, they will die. If they don't get warmth, they will die. If they don't get some care, they will die. Nobody gets through this life in some special way. So if you think there's some people out there that are living that way, that's an illusion. That's delusional. And that's where we come back to delusion. Delusion is a major hindrance. So what I was just discussing was ignorance. That was the first hindrance, that you can't change the way you think, that all that thinking is you and yours. It isn't. So there you go. You're not ignorant. And the other hindrance was you'd think you can't do anything about it. Oh, that's ignorance, step number 2. Oh, yes, you can. Number three, delusion. Yeah, other people are living better than you. Everything that happened to you is so terrible. Well, it might be terrible. Like, other people might agree, like, wow, I didn't think you were going to fall down the hill this morning, but you slipped, and that looked pretty terrible. People can agree with you. Although in times of hybrid war like today, they gaslight you instead. But in any case, it doesn't matter if people recognize how much suffering you've had or not. Do you understand? It doesn't matter. They might even overestimate it. Like, you did fall down the hill, but actually it didn't hurt. So it's just sort of embarrassing. But there they are, like, oh, can I do anything for you? That looks so terrible. Do I need to call the ambulance? See how embarrassing that is? It didn't really hurt. What does it matter what other people think? Especially when they overestimate suffering. But it's even worse when you overestimate your own suffering. My life is over. I didn't get chosen as the lead in the school play. Oh my God, what's wrong with me? The sky is falling. That's what people do. It's unnecessary suffering. It's unskillful. It's stupid. You see it in other people how stupid it is, but you're doing it yourself on some level. Yes, you are. Don't deny it. Because denial is also a big thing people do. Oh, I don't do that, until they do that, and then they don't catch themselves doing that. Or when they do that, it's justified. When other people do it, it's silly. You see, people can do that too. Don't do that. Have compassion for others that are suffering in the ways I just described, but firstly, have compassion for yourself. You are the one that is the point of contact. And if you master these things, you will be a great help to others. You don't have to help others, but you will, just because your attitude is better, be a help to others. You'll be an example for others. And if you're not, that doesn't matter either. A lot of people see you, and they really don't see you. They just see what they think they see. You're just a changing form and condition for other people. That's okay. That's how limited our cognitive abilities are. So you can have compassion for them to a certain extent, especially if they're suffering from ignorance and delusion, just like you at different times for different reasons. But that's okay. That's the human condition. You see, we're not gods. We're not unlimited. We're not all-knowing creatures. But the problem is we get caught up in self, and we think to ourselves, well, this is all I got. This is it. I have to be smarter than others. Or we start getting into these types of complicated social games and desires and cravings and aversions. And we get lost in the weeds. You see what I'm saying? It happens to you, it happens to everyone. You might think it's happening to you more, but that could be delusional on your part. The key is everybody has it, everybody has tools with which they work, and a lot of them are imperfect. You might just have a shovel, but other people might have a pickaxe, a shovel, and maybe even a hydraulic lift. They're going to be able to dig themselves out of a lot more because they have invested in that type of equipment and skills. But they still have to put in the work themselves. You see what I'm saying? Nobody else is going to get on that front loader that they have to, which might be moving massive amounts of unnecessary suffering in their case, or even a lot of, how about this? It works not just on unnecessary suffering, it works on real suffering too. Like legitimate suffering. The same technique that works on unnecessary suffering works on legitimate suffering. And let me tell you, a lot of you people out there, your suffering is absolutely legitimate. We're having a hybrid war. People gaslight other people, say it's not happening. I'm not the person that will do that. I see the suffering out there. And it wasn't just me, right? The most enlightened being on this planet, all that suffering he saw outside of his palace, he didn't deny that that was real. He did the opposite of that. But it caused him, it went overboard. It actually entered into his mind and caused him even more suffering. Then he started to worry about this and that. Then he started being disappointed with life. Then he started misunderstanding life and what this journey is, what it really is versus what it appears to be. This is a cosmic, psycho-spiritual journey. And we either make progress on it in this dimension or we regress. We revert to the hell realms. And if we do, that's not the point of this existence. Just like it's not the point to suffer unnecessarily or suffer overly much. So the other key point, attachments. We're attached to the things that make us suffering. Whenever you're suffering, especially if it's of a spiritual or psychological nature, find the attachment. Here's another corny example, because I love using corny examples, especially examples that don't personally involve me. See, personal. I don't take it personal. It's very helpful to think in terms of corny examples. I'm not saying it was my classic Ferrari that got wrapped around a tree, that I was driving irresponsibly. That wasn't me. That's just an example, right? But I was so attached. I worked so hard, I thought, to attain that, to find that, to bring it up to not even the condition it was in when it came off the factory line, but actually an improved condition. Like, we're talking a suspension that was designed according to modern principles. We're talking a different kind of tires that are now available. But changing forms and conditions, now it's a piece of bent steel around a tree. And that's just the beginning of it. But why does that bother me to this day? Because of the strength of the attachment to an external thing in a world of changing forms and conditions. You see? That is the truth. That is the absolute truth. But because people have attachments, they suffer unnecessarily. Oftentimes years, months and years, even decades after the fact. They keep coming back to that. What if I had that right now? How great things would be. But see, then it's not just inanimate objects, it's people too. Why did, just as an example, my son or daughter have to be in the car with me? And why aren't they here right now? And who's to blame for that? You see? Blaming, it's another step. So people can get caught in all types of different traps. But that abstract principle that I just mentioned, attachments, that is true. So if you know it's true, so you'll see the suffering. So you'll personalize the suffering. You'll fill in the variable for suffering. But you're connected to that suffering via your attachment. So with that principle of truth I just gave you, that attachments are essentially based on delusion, you can free yourself of any form of suffering in this dimension, no matter how seemingly impossibly difficult, such as in the example I just mentioned. See how I just increased difficulty level? See, a lot of people are like, what kind of chump are you? Hung up on a Ferrari. I'm lucky to be putzing around here in a gremlin with the floors rusted out. Here's this guy talking about a Ferrari. What's wrong with him? See? They'll discount your suffering like that. And in a way, they're right. Right? Look at it from his perspective. Change your perspective. Look at it from different things. But now that same guy might say, well, okay, wait a second. That with his kids, that's for real. That's a little too much. Whoa. He's telling me that principle works on that too? Yo. That's all of a sudden things get real serious, things get real quiet. And some of them might say, no, actually you should keep blaming yourself. It's unskillful people, subnormal, or even common normal people, they'll say, no, you should never forgive yourself for that. How about this? People you're attached to, or you're attached to their views, or you're attached to a self that is attached to their views, and they say that you should never forgive yourself for that. that you should suffer for that forever, even though maybe you explained to them it wasn't your fault. They don't see it that way. For example, if you didn't buy that damn Ferrari, this would have never have happened. People are like that. They make very, in a way that's true, isn't it? Isn't that a true comment? So people can be very unforgiving with you, but you need to be the one that's at least compassionate with yourself. And you might know the truth, it wasn't your fault. Although somebody can come and say, oh, it is your fault because you shouldn't have had it, you shouldn't have wanted it in the first place. And in a way, they're right? You have to give them credit for that. If you didn't want it, and see, that's when we come back to wants. If you don't get something you don't want, do you suffer, yes or no? Now think about this. Wanting is optional. I want this now. Well, if you do, that's why you're suffering, because you don't have it. But if you give up the want, eureka, no suffering. Can you stop wanting something? Yes, you can. Oh, but this thing I really want it. Well, then it's going to be, I don't know why, but it's going to be harder for you, really hard, to stop wanting it, but you can stop wanting it right now. Even for a second, think about not wanting it, and then how good you feel. How satisfied. I wanted that glass of water because I was really thirsty, but then I went and smelled it, and it smelled like fish crap. Oh, no. Now I don't want that. You don't want that? Nobody wants to drink that. Oh, look in the bottom. Oh, there's something awful in the bottom of the jar. Don't drink that. You don't want that. See? Now you'll say, well, that's real physical conditions. But see, we just had a thinking exercise where you were able to stop wanting a glass of water. So why can't you just see everything as a thinking exercise? Because wanting is a psychological exercise. No matter what it is. My version of success. Well, stop wanting that. That apparition of a beautiful person. Okay, stop wanting that. What else can you stop wanting today? Better job, better schooling. How about better health? Just stop wanting it. It's right here, right now. This is this universal dimension, the eternal now. You're in it. That's enough. You're distracted with essentially mind weeds, mind poisons, and then the causality of that. Well, because you don't have what you think you want, now you're dissatisfied, and now you're trapped in a reality that is only real because you're unskillful in that way. But now that you have learned these skills and can start applying them by focusing on your breath, you're just changing your mind. The breath is very real. It's very essential. You'll die faster without breathing than drinking water. It's very immediate, but it's happening unconsciously. So by switching your conscious attention to it, a very vital thing, you can stop thinking about those other things that your mind has been captured by, at least momentarily. And that shows you the break, that shows you the way, that shows you the skill. Yes, this works. It works just for a minute. It worked just for a minute. Well, how do you expand that? How do you make everything optional? You thought it wasn't optional before, but now you can see it is optional. Do you see how powerful that is? Just that little bit, that little crack of separation between dukkha, unnecessary suffering, and unskillfulness, and your essential being, your essential power as the narrator of your life. You You see that power? Just via separation, just via not wanting the thing you wanted. Oh, I wanted to go and get myself a cold beer, but now I'm gonna not want that. Well, congratulations, you're no longer a so-called alcoholic, because you can do that. You can also do that repetitively, not wanting poison, essentially. How many people want to go underneath their kitchen sink and drink Drano? That's poison too. So you want to start, your mind tells you it wants to drink alcohol. Well, what does it really want? It probably wants relief and satisfaction. Well, guess what? There's more skillful ways of doing that than poisoning yourself. So stop wanting bad things. Poids use Darvo, but it's actually Davo. So it's deny, attack, and then reverse victim and offender. So the hybrid war operator, by denying their actions, attacking the person confronting them, and flipping the roles of victim and offender. See, that's Darvo. The hybrid war operator effectively redirects attention away from their own utterly pernicious, destructive, and war criminal kinds of cultural operations, and causes doubt in the victim's claims. So mass murderers use this, rapists use this, all different types of criminals use this, insane people use this, and of course political operatives. So Darvo is the term to consider when you're considering these poids and their alternative reality narratives and their sociological contaminating presence. And what they do finally is kill hundreds of thousands of millions of people. If you're stupid enough to let them get away with it, if you take them at face value, if you don't recognize this technique. So be that first line of scrimmage, and when they come with that ball, let them hit them so hard that they fumble, because they're not expecting you to see them like that. Now you can. But see, some people might misconstrue hitting them so hard, and I see the point. Like, it's not really about interacting with them; it's about identifying them and then just eliminating them from the fields of legitimacy. Don't take them at face value. They do that. They engage in Davo or Darvo. They're criminals. Yeah. They have a nice little subset of terrible people they're aligned with, and their alternative histories and narratives and whatever they are doing to protect themselves or expand their franchise using that is not worth a damn. And they're going to hell, and their karma is terrible. And you now know how to see them. So put them in the box that they deserve to be in, not the one they think they deserve to be in. Someone asked, spiritual practitioner, how should we understand that? Thank you. And I think it's very important not to complicate matters that are already complicated. So think of it this way: judo practitioner, what is that? Well, it's someone who practices judo. Yes, that's a theory, that's a word, that's a label, but what is practicing judo like? So this opponent, right, this thought just shows up and tries to throw you like this, right? Just comes with, he grabs onto your kimono, right? He pushes with the left arm and pulls with the right, and then he moves with his feet back. It's going to throw you like that. And then if he throws you, you fall like this. You fall like this so that your chin is on your chest. Your head does not snap back, and you make the whole throw worse for you. Because being thrown isn't the worst thing. It's injuring yourself while being thrown. Because you can recover from a throw. See, judo, has all, first off, there are 1,000 different throws. All right, there's 1,000 different attacks. There's 1,000 different counters to those. And then there's a subset. Well, if you didn't counter successfully, then you have another counter. One of which is falling correctly, which is a form of limiting self-harm in a bad situation, or using it to your advantage. Okay, he's running at you for a full-on attack. Well, yield to his force and redirect it. Throw it. You see? So you do the counterintuitive thing. You pull instead of push in that instance, and you roll on your back and you throw up that leg like that, and that thought is thrown into oblivion. So you see how practical judo is? A spiritual practitioner needs to be practical like that, but it's thoughts that are coming at you. This thought, that thought. This comparison, that comparison. This mind poison, that mind poison. This unskillful way of doing things versus that skillful way of doing things, and refining your process. And there's different levels, yeah. Beginner, unskillful beginner, somewhat skillful, intermediate, expert. But even if you look at the experts, okay, I like to see practitioners that have blue belts. But this does not mean that they will throw every opponent that life has to offer. It just means that they take their practice serious enough to have most of the skills to throw most people. But if they come up against a black belt, or let's say higher than black belt, what you've seen people that have those strange symbols on their belt, could be any color. Kind of. How about tie-dyed belt with magical symbols on it? That type of life challenge that comes from past lives, something like that, and the face is a mask, and it's not just judo, weapons involved. What's that blue belt going to do for you? Well, it might do a little bit more than nothing. In fact, I know it will, but that might not be enough. So when you talk about spiritual practitioner, that's what you're talking about. It goes up to magical levels. And when I say magical, I don't mean in a good way, like bad magic. Old age, sickness, and death, though, that is a good 3 to contemplate, because those are opponents that we cannot avoid in this dimension. And so those 3 magical opponents, we can be best prepared against those. But I would say all of the defilements have, in many cases, opponents of a demonic level. And this is where you should look at the Vajrayana imagery. See it and be prepared for it. Just knowing it exists is good because it means you don't have ignorance. See, imagine in judo, you think, well, it's just a black belt. That's it, and I'm a black belt. Yippee, there's nothing this life can throw at me that I cannot handle. That might be true in judo, but actually, like I said, that tie-dyed belt with the magical symbols, that guy probably exists too. And again, will he just throw pure judo, or will he use combinations of things? So just being an expert in judo is not enough, and as a spiritual practitioner, you need to be as good as you can get in all areas that life can, or being even more precise, psychology can throw at you. And if you want to just even have a small understanding of what that is, think of your dreams. Anything that you've experienced, such as nightmares or seductions, and the realness of it in dreams, you can encounter in waking dreams. But the problem with waking dreams is they're much more real. See, when you wake up from a dream, oh, isn't it wonderful? I'm drenched in sweat. But isn't it wonderful? I'm no longer angry. I'm grateful. Very deeply appreciative that I'm not in a burning vehicle, or a burning house, or in some type of burning relationship that is unskillful. But in real life, people get caught. They get trapped. They are stuck in circuitous ways of seeing things, even though they don't want to be there. Want, you see? Then you add want. How about being stuck in historical periods, or ways of seeing life in historical periods, like being in a period of major decline for your people in real terms or psychological terms for factors outside of your control. But perhaps that's just perception. Perhaps it isn't. Perhaps some people would say it's a mixture of the two. Perhaps you had too high expectations. And finally, life is constantly changing, so your point of view should be changing, but it should be changing towards skillfulness and not unskillfulness. Ultimately, life is disappointing in worldly terms. Accumulate all this wealth, then die. Well, I have to give it away. Oh, I don't want to give it away. I accumulate. That mentality is doomed to failure, and yet it is considered a cultural norm in many places. So, spiritual practitioner, keep it very real, even though we're dealing with things that aren't considered to be real. They have their own realness, don't they? Now, I did hear one teacher say that certain people can develop a form of conceit when they hear that someone does not practice the 5 precepts. And in fact, if you want to get into higher states of samadhi, some people call it jhana. I think samadhi is the better term. It's just higher states of samadhi to keep things simple, or contemplation without aggravation, insight without aggravation, a heavenly state of mind. then he recommended 8 precepts. And I think that's the way to see it. These are not rules to make your life difficult. They're rules that increase your skillfulness. And if you don't follow them, you will be less skillful. Because the mind is very delicate. And anything can throw it off course. And those 5 precepts are to keep you on course. But in many ways, they're just a basic requirement. Now, he said that Patujanas, and I believe it because this is how Patujanas are, is they're always looking for some reason for conceit. So they say that they are practitioners of the 5 precepts, and then they hear someone is not practicing, then of course they are less than them. But see, of course, other people are irrelevant. Okay, that's number one. If they do things that are known to lead to unskillfulness or bad practice and bad results, who is the beneficiary of that, or the receiver of badness? Well, it's just them alone. It's just them alone, and that should be and is a very liberating thought. Everyone is responsible for their own skillfulness. How polite are you? Are you extremely polite? Well, then you're extremely accomplished. You're not so polite, well, you'll get the karma from that, right? Somebody shows up, you insult them directly. Now, what's going to happen? Is it going to be good? And yet it was unnecessary, and your unskillfulness is based on ignorance. Bad karma. Bad causality. But on the other hand, somebody says that they're not practicing the 5 precepts, you can see that they're not a good teacher right off the bat. Whatever they say, it's not going to really work. That's like saying, I'm into soldiering, but I don't wear protective equipment. I don't wear a helmet just because I don't think I need one. And you know that, well, in a battlefield, it's sort of like a construction site in reverse, like people aren't building things and they're trying to get rid of the other workers. And even on a construction site, though, they wear hard hats. And in these environments, metal fragments flying faster than subsonic speeds, supersonic speeds are flying through the air in great volumes. So not wearing a piece of protective equipment, and so you can see the precepts is that is quite foolish and life-threatening. And one should have very, very valid concerns about one's life. So you can have concerns about things that aren't really concerning. In fact, a lot of neurotic people are over-concerned with things that they shouldn't be. But not being having valid concern for flying metal objects, ergo wearing a helmet, ergo abiding by the 5 precepts at least in this life, that is quite foolish, and it's an avenue for destruction. And unfortunately, in this very despicable time also of hybrid war and moral inversion, the people who cooked up these so-called modern neo-barbaric kinds of animosity towards truly moral or let's just say morally productive, prohibited moral precepts, such as no sexual misconduct, they're deliberately or have been deliberately sabotaging what I guess you'd have to consider to be what they believe to be a slave class. So slave morality for slave class, which means butts up for the condom class. So that's another little term. I like to call them the condom class because they're synthetic, like they're about as natural as plastic. Although some people would say latex is natural materials, I think you need to look at the way that class has been fabricated into existence as less than natural. But you can see that the condom class would like to have a butts up culture, so 5 precepts offends their minders, i.e., the second estate, at this time. Because it's not good for their privileges, and they're more concerned about that than the welfare of the slaves that they preside over. And if you think it's not, they're not morally dogmatic about being immoral, then just challenge them on that and say that it's not something someone should define their personality on or their life on, and see what type of violent reaction many of them have, where they start the Davo technique and then say that you're a bad person and they're the good person for saying that. When, by following that precept, especially as a young person, you would avoid oceanic levels of suffering, which we can classify as unnecessary. If you would just follow that precept, if you would just get your animalistic drives under control and regulate them into an avenue that is not inappropriate or cannot be constituted, cannot be seen as misconduct. For example, by the Thai forest community, or let's say real monks and not imposters claiming to be religious people for the sake of usurping the pretense of moral authority. You see, there's nothing modern about sexual misconduct. It's as old as Babylon and much older, and it's never had good results. It's just there's a PR campaign behind it now, conducted by essentially cultural war criminals that are allowed to present themselves as something other than that by the condom class, the first estate. See, I think despots gives them too much credit. I think Nero was a real despot, but the condom class is just there based on financial artificialities, an obsolete financial system, essentially. But because they have what they have, they can employ armies of mercenaries and minders and educational kinds of operatives to attack populations morally. And recently, another thing I saw was say, "Oh, it's moral panic to be against such sexual misconduct." So that's Davo. Davo means, what is it, victim and perpetrator or something like that. So it's the perpetrator who pretends to be the victim, who then has the pretense that the person they're victimizing, ergo telling them to do something that's objectively and subjectively bad for themselves, that they're the bad person for having a precept that would protect them from avoidable, unnecessary suffering, you see. I call it sort of the rug salesman technique as well, where they involve gaslighting. Oh, it's really good for you. It's not good for you. Well, it's better for you than, alternative history time. We're in a post-truth environment, and so their truth, it's actually good for them, they say. But it's not good for you. You must be the strange person because it's so fun, just violating precepts and then getting the predictable results from that. So I think that's the way to see it. But don't bring conceit into the game like I'm better than people who are essentially hitting themselves in the face with a hammer. It's just a disturbing form of cultural, tolerated or enforced cultural dogma at this time in certain places, but I see it dying out soon. In fact, in civilized places, it never got established. So that's the way to see it. Don't think of yourself as better than people that are doing that, although you might objectively be better than people doing that, but it's really about the results. And good practice means not having moral conceit, but it also means not necessarily listening to people that are blatantly unskillful on basic questions, or being able to relegate what they have to say on the basis of that basic unskillfulness. I think that's the way to see it. It's like a karate teacher says, yeah, you all this karate, but yeah, just let people kick you at full force in the balls every once in a while. It toughens you up, or it's enjoyable. I think a little bit of incredulity. Should be a little incredulous if there are teachers that say things like that and purport to be teachers. So incredulity is what you need for those types of people. And like I said, as the second estate of the Condom class is how most of them are to be defined. Which also brings me back to my concept of the POID, political operator in disguise. The second Trump shooter is a textbook definition of that. Look at his pictures. He's trying to present himself as some type of patriot. And he's a leftoid. He's attacking a democratic political system from the position of pretending to be a patriot at the same time. So be advised, these people are out there. They think they're super slick, and they're very dangerous, very psychologically unbalanced as well. But it does give the Condom class a bunch of fake narratives and talking points, because they can just point to the photos and then say, well, the POID is the same thing as the thing he was in disguise about. So crack down on the people that he was pretending to represent. And so it gives them sort of a dual use. And there were two POIDs. Although I would say the first POID got his head blown off. He was less in disguise, but the narrative was created or circulated anyway, that he was a supporter that fell out, just developed dissatisfaction with the person he supported. See, narrative, and then just decided to go on a murderous rampage. But oh wait, no, that was all fake. Those people who died, who were in the bleachers, they were, non-people. So they have a alternative reality story for that too. 'Cause they're just gonna believe what they want to believe, by golly, just like on the 5 precepts. Works for me, man. It should work for you too. Are you an oppressor? But see, they're the oppressor. See, this is Davo is a sadistic technique, and sadists are not good people. And why are they not good? That's not a moral judgment. That's just how karma works. It leads to bad results. That's why it's bad. So remember, unpatriotic patriots, that type of incongruity, yeah, you're dealing with a political operator. Only they have a grip on subtleties like that. And dress up and pretend religious people, suggesting or condoning or tolerating principles that lead to unnecessary suffering, which is more or less on a no-brainer level, such as sexual misconduct or perversity. That's another little, we could maybe translate it that way. Or licentiousness. They're, what do you call it? Roids, religious operators in disguise. That's how you can see the second estate of the condom class. So don't let them flip you on that and say, well, you're just conceited don't let them use a Davo on you and pull that conceit card. People need to take the 5 precepts seriously and not reinterpret misconduct into misconduct or right conduct when it's not. They're going to play sophistry with themselves, that's fine, but make sure you're not one of those, because the results are predictable and they're not good. So look at that, a marriage made in hell, poids and roids. And don't they all just dance around in a circle? Butts up for the condom class. Now, some incredulous student might think, well, look, I'm a black belt in karate, and so I never heard of anyone wearing tie-dyed belts with magical symbols and masks and all of this. I have this realm pretty much covered. But I want you to think, and I do think that this is sort of the natural progression that also has synthesis with the Vajrayana school, is that once you get, let's say, real life under control, which means you do not have aggravating things in it, you have curated your real life, then the fight is taken to the Bardo realms, which means when you sleep, many people have nightmares. And this is also part of magical karma. But if your skillfulness carries over into those realms, then you make progress there as well. And then finally, this is at least how I understand nirvana to be, is that in all realms, you are skillful. And that is the highest level of skillfulness. So if you've just started this journey, there's many levels to it. And I imagine the satisfaction of nirvana to be the highest of all. A rather comforting thought, because I think it's always good to close on comforting thoughts, is the thought of fate. Fate. That component of forms and conditions is there. We did not choose our parents. We did not choose the time in which we were born. We did not choose the place. We did not choose, in many cases, the health conditions, psychological, physical, or otherwise. But those things are major factors in our lives. And how we deal with them is a major part of skillfulness vis-a-vis unskillfulness. And so that right there is the secret, that the mountain or hill that you're on, it's different than everybody else's. There's similarities, like some people were saying or would say, hey, that part where you were talking about placing anchor bolts on an overhang during windy and rainy conditions up, 1,000 feet of a sheer rock cliff. Sure, I remember being in a situation like that. How you described it, I would have done this instead. They could give you a little bit of advice after the fact. But those people are rare, whereas other people, getting to the rock face, you had to drive through a bad neighborhood where a bunch of despots destroyed thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people's lives. There's a certain amount of room for commiseration, right? They can sort of understand that if they're not going to flip it like in a Davo kind of way. Deny, attack, and flam. And there could be a little bit of commiseration, like, yeah, I did see that, like all those dead people, and we were just driving by, and then this happened, that happened, and then there was that, and then there's a lightning strike, and see, there's a certain commonality among people, but see, again, that could also be extreme. You see how the mind goes to extremes? What does that have to do with the middle path? The Buddha wasn't talking about one-eyed lepers, although he most likely saw a bunch of them in his travels. That's the other thing. The Buddha was traveling. That man was a rolling stone. He didn't just say, oh, this is the place. I'm going to stay here and let everybody just throw garlands of flowers and heap them upon me and burn pounds of priceless incense for me and heap up gifts on top of me. Many times they came to the place where pandemonium broke out because he was there. The word of mouth spread like wildfire. When the important people heard that and finally showed up, he was long gone. What they did see was his footsteps. Now, some of them tracked those footsteps into the jungle and found his meaning, or just found the person, not the meaning. And we have a here today, gone tomorrow kind of existence. So keep it moving, don't get stuck up. on unattainable goals. Don't demand unattainable things. Appreciate the infinite generosity that surrounds us. Do not be impenetrable to it.